Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, which is YOMA Chav Zayin. Perhaps let's go back to the bottom of Chavav Amud Beis. It will be 3 lines from the bottom. Right at the end of the Mishnah, the last line of the Mishnah, have shaitan v'nituchan she'elu v'elu shavan. The Mishnah concludes that regardless of whether it's a carbon yachad or carbon tzibur, when it comes to the hefshet, the flaying, removal of the skin, and nituach, dissecting the carbon, elu v'elu shavan, both will have the same halacha. Now, what does that mean? Continues the Gemara, Tana we learned in a brayso, have shaitan v'nituchan shavan bezar. We mean to say that a carbon yachad or carbon tzibur have this thing in common. They are shava to the extent that when it comes to hefshet v'nituach, you don't need a kohen. Even a zor can do these things. How do we know this? Why should this be different than other carbon-related activities? We're dealing with the carbon itself, the actual guf ha-carbon. You're removing the skin, you're cutting it up and preparing it for hakrava. Why would you allow a zor to do that? Amar chizkiya minayin lehefshet v'nituach sheshava bezor. How do we know this? Shenemar. The pasuk says, "V'nosnu b'nei Aaron hakoyin eish al mizbeach." The kohanim must light the fire on the mizbeach. We learn from here, "Nesinas eish b'yekuhuna." Yes, indeed, lighting the fire. That you need a kohen for. Hefshet v'nituach, loy b'yekuhuna, but not hefshet v'nituach. Says the Gemara, "Ham yabayla legufei." What do you find a mute? It's this and not that. The Torah is simply telling you the kohanim have to light the mizbeach. What does that have to do with hefshet v'nituach? What do you see? We're trying to exclude hefshet v'nituach from the kohen requirements. Amar Rav Simya bar Ashi. Listen to the following story. Ashkachte la'Abayi. I encountered Abayi. I observed Abayi to have a mazbele lebrei. He was teaching his son, explaining to him this very halacha of Chizkiya, that hefshet v'nituach don't need a kohen because of the pasuk discussing Bnei Aaron placing the Eish in the Mizbech. And he began with a brayso. He proceeded with a brayso from Teres Kohanim, as Rashi explains, which begins like this. V'shachat, the pasuk says, V'shachat es benat bokar fnei Hashem, v'yikrivu Bnei Aaron ha-Kohanim sadam, v'zorka sadam al Mizbech saviv. That's the pasuk. We learn from here, says the brayso in Teres Kohanim, V'shachat, shchita b'zorg sheira, even a non-kohen could do shchita. Whether it's a carbon yachad, even a carbon tzibur, and a carbon tamid. The shechita can be done through a zar. V'chimei ayin basa, continues the brayso. Where are you coming from? Why would you think otherwise? You need a pasuk to allow a zar. Why would you think that a zar should be pasal? We don't find the Torah speaking about shechita being done exclusively by kohen. The answer is mechlal shenemar, because we have this general pasuk. V'ato b'necha itcha. The pasuk concludes, if you don't safeguard the avodah, you don't prevent a zor from getting involved, v'azor hakarav yumos. That's the pasuk. We learned this earlier. A zor may not engage in avodah. Shemei ani, I can perhaps conclude from this, afilu shchita. A zor may not even do shchita. Talmud loymar v'shachad, that's been abachim Hashem, v'yikrivu b'nei Aaron ha-Kohanim sadam. The pasuk here clearly separates shchita from other parts of the avodah. First, v'shachat es ben habokar fnei Hashem. He does shchita. Who's he? We don't know. Perhaps a zar. Perhaps the same fellow that did the smich on the carbon, the owner. Then the same pasuk continues, v'yikrivu, to make it into a carbon, that's bnei Aaron. V'yikrivu bnei Aaron ha-Kohanim sadam. And we learn from here, the Kohanim only have to be involved from this point onward, Mekabbalah ve'elach, mitzvahs kuhuna. From Kabbalah Sadam onward, that's a Kohen territory. But anything before that, v'samach yadai, v'shachat, that doesn't need a Kohen. Limeid ala shchita shekshera bezar, smicha and shchita can be done through a zar. And actually, it's interesting, the Ramban, in Chumash, he interprets this, the pasuk of v'yikrivu b'nei Aaron ha-Kohanim es Adam, which the Gemara says is referring to Kabbalah. Where do we see Kabbalah in the word v'yikrivu? Says Rambam, listen to this. The pasuk is telling you, La'asos min hadam karban. V'hikrivu, turn it into a carbon, which up until now, it wasn't considered. It wasn't considered a carbon. It was a potential carbon. True reference of carbon only refers to something which is on its way to the mizbeach. After the shchita, you makabel the dam in a kli, which enables it for the mizbeach. That's called v'hikrivu. You turned it into a carbon. We learn elsewhere in the Gemara that, according to some shita, Rabbi Shimon, when something is already in a kli and available for zrika, to a certain extent, regarding certain halachas, it is already regarded as though it was already nizrak on the mizbeach, because it's phase one of the zrika. V'hikrivu. We learn from here, from that point onward, from Kabbalah onward, the kohen has to do it, and not a zar, as opposed to things that happen before that. Shchita, smicha, even a zar can do. So this is the brisa, end quote. This is the brisa on Teres Kohanim, the source to be matir shchita through a zar. Now, Abaye proceeded to explain to his son as follows. Michti, let's analyze this brisa. We just learned, Kabbalah ve'elach mitzvahs kahuna. From Kabbalah onward, that's kohen territory. So why does the pasuk have to say that the Kehanim have to place the Eish in the Mizbeach? V'nosnu b'nei Aaron hakoyin Eish lamali. What's the point of mentioning Aaron hakoyin? Isn't it pasuk that this is the pasuk after Kabbalah? In the sequence of the psukim, it's mentioned after the Kabbalah. Kabbalah Sadam. Of course, a koyin is needed. Why does the pasuk have to mention koyin? Oh, apparently it's coming to be memayit something. This needs a kohen. Nisinas Eish al Mizbeach has to be done through a kohen, lem'utei hefshet v'nituach, as opposed to hefshet v'nituach, which don't need a kohen. So that's the pshat in Chizkiah. Abaye was simply explaining Chizkiah. How do we know hefshet v'nituach don't require a kohen? Because we have a pasuk, v'nosnu b'nei Aaron hakohen Eish al Mizbeach. The kasha was, perhaps, the pasuk is not coming to be memayit hefshet v'nituach, just coming to tell you that Nesinas Eish Adam Mizbeach needs a kohen. The answer is, we already know that. We already know anything past Kabbalah requires a kohen. So why does the pasuk have to speak about a kohen doing this? It's an extra reference to kohen to tell you this needs a kohen, but not hefshet v'nituach. Says the Gemara, Vakati Itzrach, but still in all, you can't say it's an extra pasuk for the sake of a mit. It is needed for its own sake to tell you that the Eish has to be placed on the Mizbeach through kohen sal gadai tachamina. Perhaps I would say, given the lav avoided the ma'akva kapari, since lighting the fire on the Mizbeach is not an avoida which generates kapara, as Rashi says, famous words, de'ein kapara el b'dam. Kapara is generated through the dam, through the zrika, not through the fire on the Mizbeach, although it's very important. It's needed in order to be makrav the evorim and the chalavim. But remember, akrovas evorim v'chalavim are not me'akiv. The only thing that's me'akiv the carbon is the dam. So since this activity is not something which is vital to the hatzlach of the carbon, loy ma'akva kapari, loy to bay kahuna, perhaps the kohen is not needed. Kamash malan, yeah, the bay kahuna, the pasuk is telling you need a kohen for this. This is not an extra pasuk. There's an inherent chiddush here. So once again, how do you know to be memayit? Hefshet v'nituach from kahuna. Says the Gemara, elamahach. Let's move away from that pasuk. We have another source. Va'orchu b'nei Aaron ha'kehanim es hanesachim es haroish es hapadar. We have another pasuk which refers to kehanim. The kehanim should set up the parts of the carbon, the roish and the padar on the mizbeach. Why does the pasuk have to mention kehanim again? Isn't it obvious that a kohen has to do this? Michti, let's take a look. Mikabbalah ve'elach mitzvahs kahuna. We just concluded that from Kabbalah Saddam onward is kohen territory. V'archu lamali. Why then does the pasuk have to say that the kohen have to place the evarim on the mizbeach? That's certainly happening after the Kabbalah Saddam. Apparently, it's coming to be memayit something. This needs kahuna, but not something else. What's that something else? Hefshet v'nituach. So how do you know? It's hefshet v'nituach that's going to be mismayit. Perhaps we have another candidate for miyut. We know that the Mizbeach had to receive another dose of firewood, after you arranged the firewood and maracha, you added shnei gzira eitzim, 2 blocks of wood. And maybe that's what we're coming to be memayit. The arrangement of those 2 blocks of wood don't require kohen, but perhaps hefshet v'netuach do need kuna. Says the Gemara, the pasuk here of Va'archu is discussing what? Va'archu b'nei Aaron hakahanim es hanesachim, es haroish, es hapader. We're speaking about the actual goof of the carbon. Apparently, it's mistaver that when we're trying to be memayit, this needs kohen, but not something else. It's within the same realm, within the same category and context. We're discussing things which directly relate to the guf ha-korban. Mistavra divcha is the lashon of zerach. Divcha de kavasei memayit. We memayit something which relates to the actual korban. De kavasei, just as this is discussing a korban activity, the miyut should apply to something similar. Divcha de kavasei memayit, which leaves us with hefshet v'netuach as prime candidates for miyut. And they don't require kohen, as opposed to sidur shnei gezira eitzim, which aren't the actual carbon. It's wood. It's an external element. So it's mistaver that the miyut in this pasuk is referring to something similar, something which relates to the guf carbon, hefshet v'netuach, which doesn't need kahuna. The Rabbi says more just the opposite. The pasuk here is speaking about arranging the evarim on the mizbeach. This needs a kohen, as opposed to another arrangement. Sidur the kavasei, something similar, an arrangement which is similar to this arrangement, is included in this miyut, which would refer to perhaps shnei gzira eitzim, being mesader, those 2 blocks of wood. That wouldn't need a kohen, but hefshet v'netuach, that would need a kohen. Lo yisal kadaitach says no, you can't say that. Why? We know that shnei gzira eitzim need a kohen. The Amar Mar v'hikriv ha-kohen es hakol mizbecha. Again, we have a reference to kohen. The kohen will be makriv everything to the mizbeach. What's it referring to? Zuholachas evarim lekevish, transporting the evari hakorban to the kavish. And we make a diuk. Holachas evarim lekevish hudabayi kahuna. That requires a kohen. Holachas eitzim loibayi kahuna. Only the evarim, which is the guf hakorban, when you're transporting them, you have to find a kohen to do so. But halachas eitzim, which aren't really the guf ha-korban, you don't need a kohen. And let's go further with this diuk. The halach of eitzim don't need a kohen, because you're merely transporting them to the mizbech, but setting them up, that requires a kohen. Ha sidur shnei gzira eitzim b'yu kahuna. Arranging the shnei gzira eitzim needs a kohen. That's all included in this limud, as Tosfos explains. He asks a kasha, how do you know? Maybe the same pasuk, which is going to be memayit the halacha of the eitzim to the mizbeach, they don't need a kohen. Likewise, the arrangement of those very same pieces of wood don't need a kohen. The Ishleimar says Tosfos, the very fact that you have to be memayit halachas eitzim from kahuna indicates pretty clearly that the sidur, the arrangement of those pieces of wood need a kohen, because otherwise, meaning if you don't have to arrange it with a kohen, of course you don't have to bring it with a kohen. It's a kal v'chomer. If the arrangement on the mizbeach doesn't need a kohen, then certainly the halach of those pieces of wood doesn't need a kohen. Now, the fact that the pasuk has to come and tell you that halachas eitzim doesn't need a kohen indicates to you pretty clearly that the sidur shnei gzira eitzim, which is on the mizbeach, require kohen. So it's pretty clear that you could not be mamayit sidur shnei gzira eitzim from kahuna. So get back to that pasuk of va'orchu b'nei Aaron hakahanim es hanesachim, where we have another reference to kahuna. What's it coming to be mamayit? Arranging the evarim need kahuna, but something else, question mark, something else does not need. What is that? Va'orchu lamali lemutei havshet v'netuach. Apparently, that's going to provide the miyut for havshet v'netuach. They don't need a kohen. So we had 2 steps in the Gemara so far. We had Chizkiah, who sourced it in the pasuk of the Eish. V'nosnu b'nei Aaron hakayin Eish l'mizbeach. Only Nesinas Eish requires kuna, but not hefshet v'netuach. The Gemara negated that source because it's coming to tell you that placing fire on the mizbeach, even though it's not a ma'akiv kapar, that needs kuna. So there's no room for miyut here. It's not an actual pasuk. Ella, the Gemara proceeded to another pasuk, va'orcha b'nei Aaron hakihanim es hanesachim. They placed the parts of the carbon on the mizbeach. And why is the pasuk referring to Bnei Aaron again? We already know anything past Kabbalah Saddam needs kohen. It's a mit. This needs kahuna, but Hefshet and Netuach don't. Says the Gemara further, and the Hagoy Sagra takes out the next 4 words. And begins from Ella v'hikter. Says the Gemara, v'hikter is a kohen. V'hikter kohen is a kohen l'mayos. So we begin from v'hikter. V'hikter kohen is a kohen l'mayos. We have another pasuk. Another pasuk which refers to kohen, seemingly unnecessarily. Another superfluous mention of kohen. V'hikter kohen is a kohen. Why is that kohen mentioned again? Isn't that pashut? What is that Torah referring to? Be makter things after the zrika, the ivarim, the etc. Past Kabbalah, it's kohen territory. Why mention kohen again? L'mayos. So the Vilna Gaon inserts another 2 words here. Ella v'hikter. You must say like this. This is going to be the 3rd phase in the Gemara. Ella v'hikter. That pasuk v'hikter hakoyin es hakoil is coming l'mu'utei hefshet v'netuach. This is going to be the pasuk where we learn hefshet v'netuach doesn't need a koyin. V'hikter hakoyin es hakoil. Only this needs a koyin. But hefshet v'netuach, that's an ismayit. That's excluded from the koyin requirement. Now the Gemara is going to go back to the other psukim. We had 4 psukim in total which made reference to koyin. So we just clarified the word kohen in this pasuk. V'hikter kohen sakol. That's going to be the miyat hefshet v'netuach. Continues the Gemara. What about the pasuk v'hikr v'kohen es hakol mizbecha? That's the pasuk we mentioned earlier. That is speaking about the lochas evar. Zu lochas evar l'kevesh. And we learn from there halochas evar l'kevesh v'dubai kehuna. That needs a kohen. But halochas eitzim loy kehuna. And we learn further. Yeah, the halacha of the eitzim doesn't need a kohen. Sidur. Arranging those 2 blocks of wood on the mizbeach by kahuna needs a kohen. So that's the point of that pasuk. Why it refers to kahuna, to teach us that sidur shnei gzir eitzim need a kohen. Next pasuk, which refers to kohen, is v'nosnu. That's the pasuk which we began today's daf with. V'nosnu b'nei Aaron hakohen eish mizbeach. Why mention kohen there? V'nosnu l'gufei, for its own sake. And the chiddush was, although it's not something which is ma'akev kapara, you still need a kohen. And finally, the pasuk of va'archu, which was that pasuk va'archu b'nei Aaron hakahanim sanasachim sarosh sapadar. Why do you need to specify kohen? Says the Gemara. Actually, we have another chiddush learned from that pasuk, like this: va'archu lashon rabim shnayim, 2 kohanim. The pasuk continues: b'nei Aaron. Once again, it's a lashon rabim shnayim, 2 more kohanim. Then we have the word hakohanim. Once again, it's a double lashon shnayim. We learn from this 2 and 2. Lamadnu, the tle, the lamb, the carbon tamid, shaton shisha. We have to have 6 kohanim transporting the avarim to the kevesh, as we learned yesterday, that the actual guf hakarbon needed 6 kohanim. Although we spoke about 9, but 9 included the nesachim, the chavitin. The actual avarim of the carbon needed 6 kohanim. 5 for the avarim and 1 more for the inners, the kravayim. So it's not just a matter of practicality. We have a source from a pasuk that 6 kohanim are needed to transport the tle, the carbon tamid, to the mizbeach. Amar Rav Amnuna kashi leila Rav Lezer. Lezer had a kasha with this limud. He learned from this pasuk of Archu b'nei Aaron that 6 kohanim are needed to transport the tamid, the tle, the lamb. But this pasuk, if you look in the Chumash, is speaking about a ben abakar, a large livestock, an ox, a cow. Ben abakar, we learned yesterday that to transport the bakar, you need 24 kohanim. So of course 24 is a number which includes the nesachim and everything else. So the actual carbon itself needed somewhere like 9, 10, way more than 6. And he came back and responded. He answered his own kasha. This was Rabbi Lezer, because this pasuk we just mentioned, Va'archu b'nei Aaron hakahanim, concludes with the words as follows: Allah eitzim. So they transport the ivarim, they put it onto the Mizbeach, Al Eitzim, on the firewood, Ashar Leish, Ashar Mizbeach. Now, why does the pasuk have to make another mention of Eitzim when Eish Mizbeach? We already know that the carbon goes onto the Eish, onto the Eitzim and the Mizbeach, as we learned in the earlier psukim. Why make that reference all over again? You put the Eivarim, Al Eitzim, Ashar Leish, Ashar Mizbeach. Apparently, the pasuk here is trying to emphasize something. Make reference to a carbon which needs nu eitzim and nu eish on the mizbeach, and the new mizbeach. That's the carbon tablet. Every morning they would rearrange the mizbeach. New firewood, new fire. Everything was refreshed and renewed. Ezeu davar, which is the thing? Which carbon needs shenemar? Which thing has a reference to it? On which thing do we describe? Do we say shenemar by eitzim eish mizbeach? Habayim zitla. It's referring to the Tamid Shel Shachar. Let's take a look at Rashi on top. Tamid Shel Shachar. His kikacha kosuv lemerachas eitzim chadosh b'chol boiker. You have to have a new arrangement every morning. Beishal mezbeach to get boy. Vach moikda sido marachi. Because come on, parent. Gimel more later on. We'll go into this. Ubir aleh hakoyin eitzim b'boiker. Boiker vach aleh ha'oila v'amar ha'oila is rishayna. So the pasuk is speaking about arranging new wood for the ha'oila, the known oila. What is that? The oila rishayna, the first oila. First oila of the morning, that's the carbon tamid. You have to rearrange the mizbeach, the carbon oila, the carbon tamid. Al shar karbonos lehuskiku. The chidush maracha, that wasn't needed for other karbonos. So the kasha was, well, this pasuk, which enumerated 6 kohanim, which we figured was speaking about the carbon tamid, but really was speaking about a ben abaka, which needs more. How does that work? The answer was because the ending of the pasuk is clearly alluding to the carbon tamid shel shachar. Alo eitzim asher la'eish asher mizbeach. That's the carbon tamid shel shachar, which needs nu eish and nu eitzim, and the 6 kohanim refer to the carbon tamid shel shachar. So conclusion, we had a chiddush that hefshet v'nituach can be done through a zor. How do we get to that conclusion? So actually we have a list of 5 psukim which make reference to kohanim, to bnei Aaron. And the Gemara says, we interpret and apply the psukim as follows. When the pasuk says that the shchita will be done, and then v'yikrivu bnei Aaron kohanim es adam, what is that teaching us? From the point of v'yikrivu, as Ramban explained to us, v'yikrivu means turning the dam into a carbon, which is from the point of kabbalas adam ve'elach, mitzvahs kahuna. The pasuk said, v'nosnu bnei Aaron hakoyin eish al mizbeach. What's the point of mentioning a koyin there? The chiddush is, even though it's not ma'akav kapara, a koyin is needed. The pasuk says, v'hikriv hakoyin es hakoyin al mizbecha. Why mention a koyin? What's the chiddush here? Haylach is a varim to the mizbeach need a koyin, but not haylachas eitzim. But yes, sidur shnei gzir eitzim on the mizbeach. V'hikriv hakoyin es hakoyin. We learn from here. L'mayit hefshet v'nituach. And then finally, v'archu b'nei Aaron hakohanim, 3 lashonos of lashon rabim teach us 2 and 2 kohanim are needed to transport the tzla, the carbon tamid, to the mizbeach. Says the Gemara, Omer of Asim Rabbi Yehuda. We get a new sugya. Zor shesidar samarocha chayiv. Should a zor go ahead and arrange the firewood on the mizbeach, he is chayiv misa. Not only is it possible, but he's chayiv misa. It's such a chashav avoida, which results in misa. Keitzad u'oisa, what should he do to remedy what he did wrong? Parka, he dismantles the arrangement. V'chayzev v'seidra, rearranges it anew. Maya hanele, what good did he do? The zar himself rearranged it. Then we're back to square one. Ella parka zar. Rather, the chiddush is that even a zar can take it apart. But of course, v'seidra a kohen has to go ahead and rearrange it. Mask v'lo Rab Zeira. V'chiyesh lecha avoida. How can Rabbi Yehuda tell us that being Masada the Ma'arucha, which is something that takes place in the night, towards morning, but it's still night? How can you say that type of avoida, which is kosher at night, it's a nighttime avoida? It's a secondary avoida. It doesn't have the same significance as a daytime avoida. The main avoidas were done by day. A nighttime avoida will be possible, bizarre. Where would you get that from? That was his kash. Says the Gemara in response, where are you coming from? Veloy? Is that not so? You're tying together Zar with Yom? What about being makriv the Ivarim and the fats of the carbon, which happens throughout the night? And we learned very clearly back on Chav Daled Amud Aleph that Aktara, which Rashi interpreted as meaning Ivarim and P'darim, should a Zar do that? Chayiv Misa. That's an avodas laila. Soif avoda di mami. That's not a standalone avodah. It's a conclusion of the day's work. Because remember, the carbon was actually brought by day. You can't bring in the carbon at night. You can't do a shechita and drink at night. So it was done by day. Now it's a conclusion. It's a gemar of that avodah, and therefore it's considered. We relate to it as avodas yom. Therefore, Zor is possible, and there's a chiyav misa, as opposed to Sidur HaMaracha, which is an independent activity taking place at night. Why would you think a Zor would get Misa? What about Tumas Hadeshen? That's certainly an Avodas Laila, and there's a Chiv Misa if Zor does it. Of course, we had a Machlokes back on Daf Chav Daled between Rav and Levi. It was only Levi who maintained that there's a Chiv Misa for Tumas Hadeshen. He had a Chiddush that even though it's an Avodas Siluk, you're removing something, but if it's outside, the Kodesh HaKadoshim Neichel, we learn from a pasuk. There's a chiv misa, and Rav disagreed. Rav said, no, Tumas Hadeshen does not result in misa for a zor. So the first point is out, and the answer that Rav is only disagreeing on account of the fact that it's not an avodas matana. It's missing that element of providing, of contributing, of offering. You're removing something. But if not for that factor, if it would conform to all conditions, all requirements, it would be a avodas matana, say. It would be chayiv misa. So the discussion isn't whether or not an avodas laila is chayiv misa. The question is whether an avodas siluk, the fact that you're cleaning and removing, is that enough to give the zor misa? But suppose that factor would not interfere. Suppose it would be a proper avodas matan. It would be chayiv misa according to all shittas. That's the Gemara's kasha. But Tumas Hadeshen, it's avodas laila and chayiv misa. Chilas avodah di mami. That's the initiation of day's work in the Beis HaMikdash. Although it's taking place when it's still dark, but it's the tchila of the avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, and therefore it relates to the next day's avodah. It's not called avodas laila. In fact, we have a halacha as a result of this understanding. Domer Vasar Rabbi Yehuda Kiddush Yod of Tumas Hadeshen. If the kohen washed his hands and feet in preparation for Tumas Hadeshen, although it's still nighttime, lemachar. He doesn't need to rewash his hands tomorrow. Why? Because he already washed his hands at the initiation of the avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. Apparently, Tumas Hadeshen is considered the initiation, the aschala of the avodah hayom. Although Tumas Hadeshen is technically still during the night, but it relates to the next day's avodah. And that sets it apart from Sidur HaMaracha. Sidur HaMaracha is an avodas laila, and there shouldn't be any chiv misa for a zar doing that. Tumas Hadeshen is different, because it's the first avodah of the next day's work in the Beis HaMikdash. Now the Rashash points out that really Sidur HaMaracha takes place after Tumas Hadeshen. So Tumas Hadeshen is followed by Sidur HaMaracha, which leads you into the next day's avodah. So why is the Gemara calling Tumas Hadeshen Tchilas Avodah? If anything, it's further removed from the following day's avodah than Sidur HaMaracha, which is really closer to the next day's work. Says the Rashash, the Gemara doesn't mean it's closer or further. Tumas Hadeshen kicks off the next day's avodah. It's the initiation. It's the Tchila, it's the Roish, it's the Rishon. That gives a chashivas. It relates to the entire next day's avodah, because it's the first. It's the Tumas Hadeshen. So therefore, we regard it somewhat as avodas yom, because it's connected to the next day. But Sidur HaMaracha is a standalone activity. It's not tchila of the next day's work, so it's just an independent avodah. And since it takes place at night, it's avodas laila. Vela kasha, says the Gemara. Okay, so we have a kasha of Rabbi Yehuda. This is Rabbi Zer's kasha. How could Rabbi Yehuda maintain that if a zor was masad with maracha gets misa, it's a chiv, it's an avodas laila? Where do we find that avodas laila generates misa? Says, well, you're right. Eloki itma hachi itma. Apparently, when Rabbi Yochanan's halacha was related in the Beis Medrash, it was related as follows. He wasn't referring to Siddur HaMaracha, rather, Amar Asi, Amar Yechanan, Zor Shesiddur, Shnei Gzirei Eitzim, Chayiv. If a Zor was Masadr, the 2 blocks of wood on the Maracha, is Chayiv. Hoyel Avodas Yomi. Certainly this is an Avodas Yomi. The Pasuk says that he's supposed to do it, Bira Lea Koin Eitzim Baboker Baboker. And for Zor to do that, he's Chayiv Misa. It's a Choshev Avodah, it's Avodas Yomi. Now you may remember that there was actually a machlokes back in Chavdal Down base. Rabbi Yehuda maintains that a Zor is chayiv upon being masader the Shnei Gzirei Eitzim because he considered an avodah tama. We had a drasha, vavadtem, avodah tama. It has to be a final avodah, a concluding avodah. Rabbi Yehuda maintained Shnei Gzirei Eitzim, that's the final stage, the final phase of delivering wood to the Mizbeach. It's an avodah tama. That's why there's misa for a Zor. Whereas Rav disagreed. You remember, Rav said no. There's no chiyav misa for a Zor, and the more explained because he held it wasn't avodah tama. Why? Why isn't it considered a final and concluding avodah? Because there's still other things to be brought on the Mizbeach. You're going to be masada the ivarim of the carbon tamid. So as far as arrangements, you haven't really finished the process. Rabbi Yehuda says, forget arrangements. Wood is done. So it's called avodah tama. Rav maintains, we look at Siddur, arrangements. You haven't finished arranging things. After the wood, you have to bring the Ivarim. So, 2 ways to look at it. We look at the actual item that we're dealing with, the wood. Wood is over. It's avodah tam. If it is Misa, according to Rabbi Yehuda, as Rav says, we look at the Malkum. We're trying to arrange things on this area, on the Mizbeach. After wood comes the Ivarim. And therefore, the Shnei Gzirei Eitzim are not considered avodah tam, a concluding phase of the avodah. In any case, here we're focusing on Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that Siddur Shnei Gzirei Eitzim is chayiv by a Zor. It's an avodas yomi, and therefore it has chashivas. Hoyel avodas yomi. Maskef Rav. If that's the case, that it's so chashiv, it has so much significance because it's an avodas yomi, and therefore a Zor is chayiv on it. You're giving it that level of chashivas, just placing Shnei Gzirei Eitzim on the Mizbeach has chashivas enough to result in misa by a Zor, el me'ata to by pais. That's the case. Then we should have to conduct a pais, a lottery to allot the schus of doing the Shnei Gzirei Eitzim to the proper kohen. Otherwise, it's going to be machlokes. It's avodah chashuva. Why don't we find that there was a pais for this avodah? Ishta mitzvah yadatanya. Rava simply forgot the brayso, which we learned back on Daf Chav Beis, that there was a pais to decide who's going to bring the Gzirei Eitzim on the Mizbeach. Misha zacha b'tumas hadeshen. It wasn't an independent pais, but was included as a bundle in the Tumas Hadeshen. Misha zacha b'tumas hadeshen. The kohen who was zoich through the pais to do Tumas Hadeshen. Yiske b'siddur ma'aracha. He was zoich in that, arranging the firewood in the Mizbeach, u'b'siddur Shnei Gzirei Eitzim, and to bring the Shnei Gzirei Eitzim onto the Mizbeach. Continues the Gemara. L'meimer. Now, let's analyze Rava's kasha. It would appear from Rava that only an avodas yom, which has chashivas, has significance, needs pais. It's something that they're going to fight about, generates competition, lots of interest, and that needs a pais. You see that from Rava's wording, the way he presented his kasha. He said, well, if Siddur Shnei Gzirei Eitzim is an avodas yom, and has chashivas, it should need a pais. L'meimra, do you suppose that avodas yoim by pais, only a daytime avodah needs a pais, avodas laila loy by pais, as opposed to a nighttime avodah doesn't need a pais, it's not going to generate enough interest and competition and infighting, and you don't need a pais for that? First come, first serve, is that so? For Evar P'darim, we need a pais even to decide who's going to be makar of the Evar P'darim throughout the night. How do we know this? We had a Mishnah yesterday. What was the fourth pais? Ha-pais Revi, right? Mi mala ivarim and ha-kevesh la-mizbeach. Who's going to transport the ivarim from the kevesh to the mizbeach? Now, you may remember, Rabbi Yehuda tells us that whoever was zoich in the morning is automatically zoich in the afternoon. You don't need a separate pais. So when it comes to this job of taking the ivarim from the kevesh to the mizbeach, if you did it in the morning, you did it in the afternoon, which means you were there throughout the night to follow through, because Many times it would stretch into the night. So there was a pious even for a avodas laila. As is the Gemara, Seif avodah di mami. That wasn't considered a avodas laila because it was the tail end of the daytime avodah, and therefore it granted it chashivas. What about Tumar Sadeshan, which was an avodas laila, and certainly had a pious? We began the parak with the pious of Tumar Sadeshan, Chavbezim and Alf. What do you mean? It's avodas laila. Why does it need a pious? Says, well, you're right. It never needed a pious. The pious was only introduced on account of the circumstance, because of the story. Bumped him off the kevesh, he killed him. But technically speaking, you don't need a pious for an avodas laila, unless it gets so popular that it results in competition and sakon. Says then, well, okay, lemeimer. So what do you tell me? The avodas yoim v'shezor chayav alei misa b'yapayis, something which is considered an avodas yoim, something which is also chashav enough, an avodah, that a zor gets misa upon doing it. Only that is chashav enough to generate a concern in our mind of perhaps competition and fighting, and therefore boya pious. Is that so? Is that the formula you're working with? That's what it sounds like from the Gemara, from Rava's presentation. Elamiata to boya pious, only something which is truly chashav with this yoim and is a chashav avodah that a zor will get misa for it. Only that's considered important enough to require a pious. But ein zor chayav alei misa l'boya pious. But otherwise, there's no chayav misa on it. It's not chashav enough. It doesn't need a pious. Very shchita. Why does shchita need a pious? How do we know it needs a pious? You want to add on the chafei manal. A pious Hashem ni mishoichet. If shchita can be done through a zar, there's no chayav misa on zar. So why is that considered a chashav enough avodah to require a pious? Shana shchita tchilas avodah. That's the beginning. That's the tchila of the avodah of the carbon. It has that added chashivas, and therefore a pious was needed. Amar Mar Zutra v'Teimer Ravashi. He says like this: we just concluded that Sidur Shnei Gzirin on the Mizbeach, should a zor do that? He's chayv misa, and Rabbi Yechon tells us because it's avodas yoim, had to be done exclusively by day. V'anan loitnan hochi. We seem to have a Mishnah which indicates otherwise. You can do it even at night. This is the Mishnah coming up on the next daf. Bez Hashem. Amalem Amunah. The Amunah calls out to the Kehanim. Tzuru, go out and take a look. Go to some lookout area, to some tower where you can see far out, and take a close look at the horizon. Tzuru. If the Zman of Shchita already arrived, if the Mizrach has already become bright, which indicates time for the Shchita of the Talmud. We don't find that he's overly concerned about determining the exact time which would be appropriate for delivering the Shnei Gzirah on the Mizbeach. Apparently you can just do it as soon as you think it's light. You don't have to go confirm it properly by going up onto the tower and looking out. Well, if Shnei Gzirah can only be done by day, then why wouldn't they have to check properly? Says the Gemara, the truth is it had to be done by day. But this extra concern, this extra care to go up to a high area, onto the Chayma, onto the Gag, as Rashi says there, that was specific to the Karban Tamid. Hach the less leta contact Tamid. We only discuss something which cannot be remedied once done. Once you sheikh the Tamid, you can't re-sheikh it. So therefore they had to make sure 100% time has arrived. Hach the isla takanta, but something which can be fixed up, such as the Sidur Shnei Gzirah. At worst case, if it turns out that it's not yet morning, just take it off, put it back again. Like Tani, there's no need to discuss it and be overly concerned about it. Let's take a look at Rashi, around 15, 16 lines from the bottom of the Amud. We seem to learn in the Mishnah that Sidur Shnei Gzirim are not day-related. Mishnah says, the Memuna calls out, go take a look in Megiyaz Man HaShchita, in Heir HaMizrach, the eastern part of the horizon has already brightened up and gotten light. Why are we not concerned regarding the Eitzim? they're less like takanta. Tamid is different. There's no takana to it. Im nishchat balayla, as opposed to the firewood, there's like takanta. Im sirjam balayla, at worst case scenario, you did it at night. Perkan v'choyzim v'sirjam b'yom, take it apart and redo it. L'kach lo yitrichu lalas l'gag v'lirois, im egia hazman. So we'd have to burden them to go up to the roof to check and see. The whole point of this teirach to go up to the roof was only because it happened one time. The moonlight shone up the sky. They figured it was the sun. The Gemara later will tell us this. When it comes to the firewood, we don't have to climb up to the roof. Just observe from the ground below, and once you see Mashiach Mizrach, and you see it's getting light, fine, you can assume time has arrived. At worst case, if you got confused with the moonlight, they're not overly concerned, because you can always fix it up, take it apart and redo it. So let's just stop for a moment. We had Rav Asi, the name of Rabbi Yehuda, who told us initially, according to the first version, that if a zar arranges the maracha, it's chayiv misa. And the Gemara says, well, how could that be? It's an avodas laila. What do we find? Avodas laila generates misa for a zar. The Gemara reverted to a different version, that we're not speaking about siddur maracha, rather siddur shnei gzira eitzim, which is certainly an avodas yom. And therefore, if a zar should do that, he's chayiv misa. It's an avodas matana. You're offering, you're giving. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, who's the Mandamah here, it's called Avodah Tama because that's the final phase in delivering wood to the Mizbeach. Now there's an interesting point here. The Gemara leads into a discussion regarding when is a pious required. The Gemara says it has to be Avodah Yoim, has to have Chashivas, an Avodah where a Zor would be Chayiv Misa, then that needs pious. What about Shechita? Well, that's Tchilas Avodah. So we work with certain guidelines. And that determines whether or not a pious will be adopted. Now the kasha is, you would tend to think of a pious as simply a practical method, a practical formula which was introduced by the kahana, by the chachamim, to avert any sort of machlekes and danger. You would tend to think you don't have to follow. It doesn't follow certain very specific guidelines. It's not halachically mandated in this case or that. Whenever you need it, you do it. So the truth is that the concept of pious is based on a pasuk. This is Fri in Parshas Korach, which says like this. The pasuk tells us v'avadtem, telling the Kohanim, do the avodah of the Beis Hamikdash. Yochel afilu miruvavim. Perhaps they can do the avodah even in a disorderly fashion, mixed up, competing, fighting. No. Tamad lo yimar avodas matana etenes kunascha. Says it's a Fri. Just as a matana is alidei pious. You give a gift in a organized way, an orderly way. So Aidei Pais just means it's organized. It's Mesuder. Same thing with Avoida. Avoida al Yedei Pais. There can't be an Irv of mayhem. That doesn't work. The Torah requires things to be done in an organized, orderly, civil manner. So it's a pasuk. Some say it's really Minat Torah, some say it's a Asmachta. In any case, it's sourced in a pasuk in Parshas Korach. So it's not just a practical thing. And therefore there's certain requirements. Well, the Din Torah only applies to certain cases. Well then, how do you know when to apply it? And you can ask a kasha in the other direction. If it's a pasuk that requires pious for avodas, then why this avodah, not that avodah, not the other one? So the answer is partial because the Torah is not telling you have to make it pious for every avodah. The Torah is telling you it shouldn't be mu'urvav. You shouldn't have mayhem and disorganization. Now, if an avodah wouldn't generate much interest, such as what the Chacham figured Trumas Hadeshin would do, it wouldn't be too much of an attractive avodah. You wouldn't get up in the middle of the night for it. Avodah laila. So they didn't make a pious. There's no concept of irvav. It's not like you need a pious for every avodah. If it can be done in a calm, organized manner without pious, that's fine. Eventually, I saw that it was creating machlekes and sakana. Well, now it goes back into that din. Yochel yu muruvavin. No, you need a pious. So that's Pshat in this whole Gemara here. The Chacham would determine for us which one of the avodos are considered those which can potentially generate irvuv, machlokes, mayhem, and disorganization. It has to be avodas yoim, avodah chashuva, which is something that's attractive and generates interest and creates competition. And that needs a pious. But again, the concept of pious, when needed, is mandated by Torah. So both things are true. It's a halachic requirement, and it has a practical application. Continues more. There's another version of the kasha of Rav Zera. What was the kasha of Rav Zera referring to? Rabbi Yochanan. The original Rabbi Yochanan, who tells us that a zor was masada de maroches chayiv misa. V'ikad the amri maskla Rav Zera, on that Rav Zera is the kasha. Maskla Rav Zera v'chiyesh lecha avoida sheish achrei avoida psul b'zor. What do we find? That an avoida which has after it another avoida, such as sidur maroch. That's not the final phase. You arrange the firewood, then you bring more firewood. Then you arrange the ivarim. So why would a zor be chayiv misa? That's not avoida tama. It's not a final, concluding avoida. V'chiyesh lecha avoida. What do we find in avoida? Sheyesh achrei avoida, which is followed by another avoida, upsula b'zor, on which a zor be chayiv misa. Rashi uses the words upsula b'zor lis chayiv misa in the case of Mishnah's Medaik. The main point here is chayiv misa. Continues the Gemara, and Rashi actually tells us to skip the first 4.5 lines. So let's begin in the middle of that 5th line. Elo, the word Elo. Says the Gemara, based on this kasha, we have to rearrange Rabbi Yechanan's halach, just as the Gemara did earlier. Elo ki itmar chi itmar. Rather, we're said as follows. We're not speaking about siddur ma'aracha. Amar Rabbi Yechanan, zor shesiddur shnei gzira eitzim chayiv. The zor should arrange the 2 blocks of firewood on the marach is chayiv, because this certainly is an avodah tama. Hoyel avodah tama is the final phase of wood delivery to the mizbeach, and therefore he'd be chayiv misa. Okay, time for a brief chazorah of today's daf. We began with a reference to the last part of the Mishnah, which told us that hefshet v'netuach can be done through a zor. The Gemara was looking for the makar of this halacha. I went through many psukim, actually 5 in number, where we had a mention of Aaron, b'nei Aaron, Kohanim, that are needed for those various activities. And the question is why? Why does the pasuk have to make specific mention to Aaron and to Kohanim throughout all those psukim? And we concluded as follows. The pasuk which says, V'yikrivu b'nei Aaron Kohanim, as Hadam, is coming to teach us, Mi Kabbalah ve'elach mitzvahs kun. From Kabbalah onward, that's Kohen territory. V'nostum b'nei Aaron Kohen Eish Mizbeach is telling you, even though it's not Ma'akav Kapara, you need a Kohen. V'yikir HaKohen is HaKol Mizbecha is coming to tell you halachas Eivarim needs a Kohen. V'nah halachas Eitzim, but yes, Siddur Eitzim on the Mizbeach. And V'yikir HaKohen is HaKoil is coming to be Umayit. Hefshet v'netuach, that doesn't need a Kohen. And we have another pasuk, V'archu b'nei Aaron Kohanim is an Asachim is a Poder. What's the point of mentioning Aaron and Kohen there? To tell you that a tzleh needs 6 Kohanim. How's that? Va'archu, 2. B'nei Aaron is 2. Kohanim is 2. A typical carbon tub needs 6 Kohanim to transport it to the Mizbech. We began another sugya. Rabbi Yochanan tells us, a zor who's mesada the marocha on the Mizbech, he is chayiv. The Gemara had one kasha, then we had another version, another kasha. The first kasha was avodas laila. What do we find that a zor is chayiv misa for avodas laila? According to the second version of the Gemara, the kasha was, it's not avodah tama, because it's only the first phase, which is followed in the next phase of a shnei gzira eitzim. So why would a zor be chayiv misa? The Gemara concluded, you're right. He didn't say that. All Rabbi Yechanan said was, if a zor was mesader the shnei gzira eitzim on the mizbech is chayiv, because that conforms. A, it's avodah yoim, and B, it's an avodah tama. Hatzlacha Rav, and all the best to you.